Will Collier, welcome to Mint, my friend. It's about time. Thank you for being on.
Of course. Thank you for having me, man. I'm stoked to be here.
I'm stoked to have you. Decent has been making a lot of noise. We did season 4 was all about the music industry. And in the recap article, I name dropped Decent because I was excited to have you guys a part of season 5. Season 5 is here. Here you are. So let's just dive right in.
Hell yeah.
Who are you, Will? I always start with an intro. Who are you? What does the world need to know about you? Like, what's your background and how did you get your start into crypto?
Yeah. So I guess hello world. I'm Will. It's a pleasure to be here. I got my start in crypto back in 2017. A couple of my buddies from school actually introduced me to it during that sort of 2017 bull run. It's a crazy small world. I feel like when you get into the space, and so it turns out one of my good friends from school actually was an early member of the Uniswap team, and so so he got a few of us into it back then. It wasn't something that I dove into as a builder or I think got too deep into for a little bit after that, but thank God he introduced me to it then. And I guess my background, I went to school at Brown University. I graduated a couple of years ago. That's actually where I met two of my co-founders, and my love for music starts far before then, but my journey into music started freshman year. One of my co-founders, Xander Carlson, he himself is a musician and artist. When I first met him freshman year, he was just, it was actually pre his current artist project. He was releasing from his distributor account. Sophomore year, he recorded his first album in our dorm. He was still independent then, signed to an independent label. Junior year, senior year, he actually signed to Sony's Palm Tree Records. And so
cool.
He's been touring now for a while with Kygo. He just had his first headline tour. He's one of my best friends in the world, and it's been an absolute blessing for me to have that experience right on the sidelines of his growth all the way through every level of this industry. And so that's been so special and something that's inspired me to get in and really want to work with him to change a lot of the inefficiencies and some of the, I guess, the macro problems that he has seen and experienced first person as an artist in the industry. And so that has been really special to witness and now become a part of with him.
So then he's had a big impact on, I guess, your journey into music in Web3, right? Because also Palm Tree Crew is a big name in the space as well. Brett Shear has been on the podcast season 3. Big music NFT collector as well. So it's interesting how small worlds are. Also, I'm under the impression that we know similar people as well. So my homie Bobby, who was in YC with you also, and AJ Eckstein, I guess, who was with at Accenture with you or something like that, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So also two great friends. Yeah, two great friends. So small world. So your love for music, okay? I guess a lot of your path into wanting to work in the space stemmed from your friend, from what I understand. But the origin of where your love for music, like, kind of, where does it start? Like, are you a musician? Do you play anything?
So my stint in music is actually it's half, I guess, a little embarrassing. A lot of people wouldn't guess, but I started as many kids do. I played piano,
Okay, there it is.
But then in middle school I joined the choir, and in high school I actually sang a cappella. And so yeah, so something I actually don't think I've talked about very much at all with people in the space, but I love singing. I love I think music in general is just so, as it is for everyone, it's just so I guess emotive and emotional. And so that side of music is amazing. I love the way it makes me feel and the way that it makes others feel. But personally, I have never been creative enough to actually write and create that music myself. And so, kudos to everyone that is able to, because it's insane.
So that was actually my next question. Like at some point, did you ever feel like you could do it professionally?
No.
And why?
I'll just say no.
All right, solid. I've been playing the drums. I think if you're like a frequent listener, I've been playing the drums. I talk about it a lot. But I've been playing ever since like 5 years old, and I never thought I could pursue professionally because I never thought there was money in it. For the most part, despite all the idols that I've watched like growing up, and despite how how good I thought I was, or at least what people told me, I never felt like I could do it professionally because I could never make income from it, and I'd always be competing with the gospel drummers and all the people that grew up playing in church their entire I don't know. I'm not gonna get too into it, but music NFTs are like the kind of like the aha moment for me. Like, shit, I'm an idiot. Like I should have maybe pursued music and jumped into this space.
I think something that I haven't put much thought to in the past, but from what you just said, being someone that was, I guess, performing or being being a part of music groups, casually as a kid, I never had that thought, like you asked, if I could do it professionally or make a career out of it. So I guess I never at that age thought too hard into, well, if I wanted to, how would I? But truly, I think something to what you said, as an aspiring musician, as someone that's younger, knowing where to start and knowing, okay, I have my music, I have maybe some smattering of people that think I can make it, some smattering of people that believe in what I do, or I, through the internet have built a small following, maybe have gone viral. I guess there's no, and to this day, there's no real equation, or there's no one path as to how to get started in music. And I think that is something where, for example, I mean, just a sort of comparison to if you leave college and you want to go, work in finance, or you want to go do a job path that is pretty marked out. I think that's a lot less daunting than going and saying, well, I'm going to be a musician. Where do I start? Right. And there's, I think that, like you said, music NFTs, being able to rally together with a community, with a small group of people that believe in what you do, and then use that small network and slowly grow and build that together, and work with this team or community around you. One of our main goals, our mission with Decent, is how do you accelerate and actually make it easier for anybody that's looking to grow an audience, grow a reach, to actually do that through these interactions, through these engagements, and by leveraging today social networks and digital opportunities that have made it so easy, yet also so hard to get access to these audiences and this broader sort of success in music, right?
Yeah. So speaking of Decent, how did that come about? Well, every project has a really interesting like origin story. I know you guys are a few co-founders. You guys went through Y Combinator. You guys recently finished Y Combinator, so congrats on that.
Thank you.
And I'm curious, like, how did you guys like all come together and say, okay, we need to build this new vehicle for the music industry, and we need to do it in a way where we envision a completely different vision? Because if you go on Decent, you see that you guys are actually up to something completely different, which is, it's cool to see, which we'll talk about more. But I guess before we even get into that, what is the origin story? How did Decent get started?
Yeah. So like I said, that I guess problem statement of, artists not necessarily capturing the value that they should or could be, seeing the different inequities in deal structures throughout the industry. That all really, stemmed from that experience of Xander's, but also, from what I had seen on the sidelines. And so we had started talking about how NFTs and the blockchain could play into being a part of that solution in early 2021. And we actually were lucky enough to, the team really came together in the late summer, sort of early fall. All four of us, Will, Charlie, Xander, and myself, we came together. Charlie got introduced through a mutual friend to me and Xander, who had been ideating around the nascent idea of Decent for a few months, had done a bunch of artist interviews, and unbeknownst to us, Charlie had actually been building a very similar platform, or his mission, his vision was the same as what we were doing. And so we got introduced through someone that knew what each of us were working on, said, "Hey, I think you're doing something very similar." And it was incredible. I mean, we actually all sort of clicked immediately. It was what was really cool, and I think actually almost a metaphor for what we have continued to build and are building today is Charlie had come to the same conclusions about the different inequities and what artists were facing, but from a very analytical perspective. His background, he went to Princeton, studied behavioral economics there, actually in college wrote a few papers about Bitcoin and the dynamics within those markets. And he was working in investment banking, but actually on the in the music industry, in the music sector. So covering M&A and different deals between independent music technology companies. And so having to do deep dives into them and figure out, what are these companies and how are they plugging into this independent artist journey. And so all the conclusions in what he was building, which was very on point, aligned with what Xander and I had been thinking, was from this extremely analytical and sort of economic model based approach. Whereas, our approach thus far, what we had been really building for was also, completely artist interview and qualitatively driven. And so by combining both of those things and figuring out what is the best way to use some of these economic models to really optimize value opportunities for artists, while also making sure that the way that we come to those conclusions is figure out and talk to artists, figure out what is needed, what would be used, and then ultimately the how did we then build the best opportunity to capture that. We came together and it all just clicked. And so that's sort of the initial origin there. But we really, I guess I would say the true beginning really was sort of that beta release we did in December, and then ultimately how that played into the sprinting growth that we've been, the journey we've been on the last 4 or 5 months.
So since December, the music NFT space has has gone crazy, quite berserk actually. Artists are getting liberated left and right. New works, new types of genres are appearing, from like auto-generated music that I've never really heard before, to all these really cool things that artists are getting creative about, to these new economic models, which is something that's also unique to Decent. And we've seen like an insane rise. And a lot of that was covered during season 4, and why I'm continuing it onto season 5. I want to understand, Will, but from your point of view, how do you see the current state of music NFTs?
Yeah, I think music NFTs is a very broad term, right? And I think everyone acknowledges that. In terms of music NFT releases and platforms and different opportunities, there is in our eyes, I think, a little bit of a stagnation in sort of the movement of how things are happening and the way releases are being marketed and occurring, even though it's just this first year of music NFTs, it does feel like still to this day the most prevalent, most leaned upon opportunities are limited editions or one of one. And there's still either platforms or sort of central entities that are setting fixed prices, and there's limited quantities in certain ways. And I think it's obviously there's a lot that goes into innovating and moving past and building on top of these things. But I think one of the core theses of how we've been approaching it at Decent is the only way that we're going to continue to figure out what the true product market fit of music NFTs as an industry, or music NFTs as a disruptor or an augmentation to Web2 music, is by just trying new things and ultimately saying, okay, what did we learn from this last one? What was good? What was bad? How do we then keep the good while finding new ways to sort of cut out those negative externalities in certain ways?
So how do we ensure that like collecting music NFTs doesn't just become a fad and becomes a part of culture? It becomes a part of like an innate action that fans need to do to support an artist. Like, how do we ingrain that into society? And do we need to?
Yes, I think the answer to do we need to is yes. I think actually in a lot of ways, I think what we've seen is Web3, maybe it's not going to be 100% of fans, 100% of collectors that are engaging in these new ways, engaging at these higher levels. I think the amazing part about Web3 is, from what we've seen, you don't need a million, 2 million true fans. You don't need more than maybe even 25 or 50 so far. But if you're able to, I guess, have that true fan community, you can then, work together with it, leverage it in certain ways that can ultimately lead to greater growth. I think sustainability is the most important part of making sure that, and scalability, that this is something that sticks around. And ultimately, that's where with Decent, we really are trying to look at, what is the relationship, what is the artist getting out of the relationship, but what also is the fan getting out of it, the collector, right? A marketplace or a transaction or a relationship, everything has two sides. And I think there's a lot of questions around how, but also I think the biggest question we need to answer for music NFTs is why, right? In terms of why on the blockchain, why music NFTs, why not just continue the sort of Web2 way of music. Ultimately, if it's very patronage based, collection based, that doesn't necessarily, to me, feel sustainable or like there's long-term vision associated or long-term scalability. The why, I think, with music NFTs is like, how are we using these new engagement methods between artists and their fans, artists and their collectors? How are these new communities and groups that are all aligned on certain actions, that are aligned on value creation, and ultimately able to have this incentive alignment such that by creating the community through music NFTs, by engaging at this next level, we like to say, at Decent, we're building the next level beyond patronage, that post-patronage relationship. The why of how that then allows independent artists of all kinds to grow and accelerate their growth and actually grow their total fan base. I mean, if you look at sort of streaming fan base versus Web3 fan base. Right now, it's truly bifurcated in a lot of ways. But how does Web3 integrate and augment the total success of an artist, not just Web3 or Web2, but both together? That bridge that I think a lot of times is debated, whether it's a bridge approach or a break approach.
Yeah. So thinking about like the why again, okay. What is the why right now for fans? Like why should fans be collecting these music NFTs, right? Whether it's a patronage based music NFT, whether there's ownership attached to it, and ownership again. That's another question I have for you is like, what is ownership in Web3, right? Which we can get into later. But first point is like why why collect even? Like why collect an audio file, right?
Yeah. I think ultimately it depends on the fan, right? It depends on the collector and what they're optimizing for, what they are really excited about. And in a lot of cases so far, we've seen across platforms, across the music NFT space as a whole, a lot of people are excited by being able to support and discover these new artists that they haven't before been able to find. A lot of it is relatively patronage based. I think just acknowledging the crypto or NFT space as a whole, a lot of the hype and the current or the previous market conditions, I guess this week has been, a new story. But the hype of the first few months of 2022, there was a lot of speculation and flipping and growth of secondary markets. And I think actually so far those secondary markets may not be entirely based on that same support and patronage, but it does seem like that a lot of that was sort of financially based. But I think that ultimately the why for a sustainable long-term opportunity needs to really be more about what is the collector, the fan getting out of the relationship, getting out of the experience as well. I think the question around utility is a big question that relates to the why, right? Is this relationship, is it the being close to the artist? Is it that they are then in a community or in a chat or engaged with 40, 50, however many other people that have similar passions, similar interests? Is it the opportunity to earn on this early support, early notion that this artist is going to be big? And I think the sustainable long-term answer is it needs to be a combination of it all. And there needs to be the ability for someone to participate, give early support, feel like they are winning as well, create wins for not just the artist, right? Artists winning in terms of getting these new communities, these new resources, the upfront capital, all that, but also for the fans, the what's in it for me is I think the most important opportunity for sustainability.
Yeah. So given the current market conditions, because you brought that up, like, is the why affected? Like, does that change? Like, does the relationship between the artist and the fan differ now that market conditions have tanked, and we've seen absolutely like a destruction of everything that's been happening?
Yeah, it's I don't think the why changes. I think the why becomes all that more important. The why, I think, is during a bull cycle, during a hype cycle, sometimes that why can be a little obfuscated or
yeah, it could become gray. It could become gray when shit is down. Yeah.
And so ultimately, the why is, I think, going to be what makes it such that even in a bear market, there are buyers and there is demand and there is this sustainable relationship that is not solely based on if I can speculatively flip something, or there's going to be I guess, liquidity through a secondary market or external buyers. But certain things that we've explored with Decent is the idea of assurances and the idea of liquidity, and how even with NFTs, which at a macro level across all verticals within the NFT industry, there's not a ton of automated liquidity or immediate liquidity for NFTs. I think the big question that we look to answer is what is that assurance, or what is the sort of risk level for people entering? And outside of the bull markets, in the long run, what are the next million, 10 million people going to need to be able to participate in these relationships, in this game and opportunity with the artist? And so that last year or so, the sort of early crypto adopters, I think in the space as a whole, there was a lot of irrational spending behavior, because it's the hype cycle, and there's so much value that's been created over the last few years. But if you're looking at now, we're trying to get mainstream adoption, or the next wave of demand into the space, that next profile of person is going to be a lot more of a rational, sort of reserved consumer behavior.
Can you help me build a profile around what a Web2 fan looks like, and how does it differ from a Web3 fan? Because it's super important in understanding this whole entire concept of what a music NFT is, where this excitement is coming from, who's buying into this, what it means to them as a fan. And I think it's super important because a lot of collectors are obviously listeners, but not every listener is a collector, right? And understanding the differences between what causes someone to actually collect versus just simply listen, right? I think there's similarities. Like if an artist ends up opening like an OnlyFans or Patreon, or some other type of like subscription based platform to support them and their content beyond what's publicly available, I think it's like the person who subscribes to that is very similar into the category of who would fit into someone who may buy music NFT. Maybe not at the price points that we're seeing right now, like $300, but at like a $20 price point, $15 price point, maybe someone who goes to a concert and buys merch or buys the cups or buys all these things, they would fall under that category. But from your point of view, because a lot of the ethos behind Decent is bridging the gap between the artist and the fan in a much more intimate setting, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you understand the difference between a Web2 fan and a Web3 fan?
Yeah, I think the one of the core differences is that mindset of the relationship between the artist and the fan. So far to this day, it's been very one-sided, right? And I think through the distribution and the way that platforms work, even for artists, it's a very opaque relationship, and that's something I think that has just kind of been accepted. Celebrity has been created. The idea of a person being a celebrity has been created because there's sort of a mystique around the fact that they're being observed, listened, loved by millions of people across the world, but they're sort of at this higher level, right? Artists have been and different actors, whoever, have been put on this pedestal. But I think Web3, it does seem like the mindset shifts a little bit towards, oh, well, I love what this person is doing. Maybe there's actually a way that I can be a part of that I can get in and be a part of the journey, help accelerate what they're doing, be a mouthpiece for them as a person, as a brand, as an artist, as well. The Web2 fan, I think, has also that mindset that in a lot of ways, the access to music and music itself is something that is accepted as a almost a given at this point. Streaming and the democratization of distribution and audiences through DSPs and other platforms the access to music is an inherent right in a lot of ways, but that I guess the ways that people then decide to spend their money on, on the art, on artists, is in that sort of merch opportunity. But in sort of the Web3 mindset, I think really, instead of it being the artist and the fan in a transactional relationship where the mindset is, well, what can I give to this artist? What can I do to show my support in terms of just a transaction? It's now, well, I have a lot that I can offer in a more active way. How do I participate and support and help them grow, but also retain sort of, I guess in this case, my piece of that, because fans are really, and with artists, are a part of that. Fans are the reason, the sort of momentum driver of artist success. And so capturing sort of your small piece of this culture, this movement that you've helped create and support and love and put yourself into. Now it's not just a one person at the head of it, but now surrounded by and appreciated and participated within a ton of different fans, all working together, would be the sort of mindset step, if that makes sense.
So where does Decent come into play now? Like, how does Decent focus on strengthenizing? I don't even think that's a word. What's the word that I'm looking for? Strengthenizing. I'm gonna start using that. I'm gonna make that a word.
I think strengthenizing works better in that regard.
That is right. Strengthenizing. That's not a word. You guys will let me know if it's a word or not. Strengthening. What is Decent doing to kind of strengthen the gap between the artist and the fan? And I guess that also goes into like a lot of what makes you guys unique through this bonding curve model that you guys kind of went forward with. Can you talk to me more about that?
Yeah. Ultimately, the big vision for the why, right? Coming back to that why.
Right.
The whole point is to be creating more value for creating opportunities, tools, relationships to better and accelerate artist careers. And where music NFTs stand today, a lot of emphasis, a lot of the focus, it all comes around a mint and and sort of a split second or a period of time that's relatively short, in which a lot of this value is captured, in which a lot of this hype and marketing happens. And then post mint, which is when I think the work truly begins and where the needle can really be moved, is actually, I think it's been under scrutinized, or there's a lot of gaps to be filled there. And so with the crescendo, our bonding curve mechanism, with that dynamic pricing model, the fact that it's community and network value that is also a part of that equation, where the more people that participate and enter over time, there's a correlation between then the price of the NFT, as well as the returns to the community members as well. The idea is to really optimize and set the rails for that post mint relationship, because that is where we see the most important, the most important period for artists and their collectors and their fans. And even today, I think the word community gets thrown around a ton. The idea of an active relationship, of what can, or I guess the question is a lot of times, what can the artist do to keep entertaining and giving utility to the collectors? But I think that mindset, again, of it being a burden on the artist to give or be making that utility or creating those opportunities themselves, I think that is a little misguided as well. But ultimately, how do the rails, right? How does setting the ability for those active relationships to be incentivized, be made into a true opportunity for each individual within that artist community to share things with their networks, to spread the reach, to feel like they are actually making relationships with the other people that are also supporting the artist with the artist themselves. That post-mint relationship is where the needle gets moved for independent and emerging artists, especially being able to use that team around them. And that's something that we think is deserving of a lot more focus than not just that initial mint. And so with the bonding curves, with the NFT staking to earn social tokens, and ultimately, engage to earn NFTs, which we did with Marty Grimes, and are going to continue to roll out a few things along those lines. It's I think for us, it's all about setting the rails for those relationships to happen, not necessarily giving exact instructions or being overbearing about how that then takes form, but making room for and creating the space for these artists and fans to continue to align and work together and create value jointly, not extract value from each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess like more into your unique stack as to what you're offering for artists that kind of makes you guys different from the crowd. I'd love to talk more about like the stake to earn, right? Models and a lot of these like DeFi primitive-esque models that you guys have in place that introduce, I guess, more liquidity, right? For artists and for fans. And I guess what that means, like big picture.
Yeah. Really, I think the opportunity to have something, NFTs are really a reputation layer, right? NFTs themselves, the visual component, the I guess more tangible, excuse me, the more tangible sort of asset, the fact that it is something that has some sort of inherent scarcity in what it is, that is a big part of the sort of social side, the in a lot of ways sort of the clout side of the why in music NFTs. A lot of people have talked about the fact that discovering music early, now if you do that, you can truly prove it on the blockchain, have that NFT or asset that you can display and hang your hat on. But the DeFi mechanics, I think, are something that is really exciting for how value can be elevated and created, not just for the artists, but also for the fans and creators as well, where I think I said this earlier, we just want to find the best way for these digital models, these rails to be set so that relationships can happen and respond to real world artist problems, right? So for example, when we first introduced Crescendo, the bonding curve mechanism, one of the reasons that we did that was we were seeing that, okay, there's a stigma that's been created. There's right now it seems like the market is trending such that metrics of success in music NFTs are a sellout, and how quickly did you sell out? And if you don't sell out, it almost is sort of like, whoa, what's going on? It's a little bit, it felt like for a while there, it almost
exactly, yeah,
failure.
So true, yeah, very true.
And so, well, as an artist, it's sort of counterintuitive to want to cap the amount of people that can support you, that can join your community, that can become this movement behind you. Yet when you have something like a limited edition that doesn't necessarily have a fundamental value or an attachment to revenue or a stream of quote unquote value, then that initial that scarcity, I guess, becomes sort of the true value creator in that regard, right? But really, what is the true IRL logic of, well, if I want someone to be able to support me, someone else has to leave my community or someone else has to stop supporting me. And so with the crescendo model, with the bonding curve, there's no hard cap on the amount, but as the fan, as the price discoverer, you can see that, okay, right now the NFT, if I wanted to buy, is 0.2 ETH. Well, I might not value joining the community, joining this artist's group, or what I'm going to get out of the experience at 0.2 ETH, but someone else might. And so it's allowing the market and the demand of the entirety of the market to dictate that true I guess scarcity cap or level. And similarly with the NFT staking and also the bonding curve model, that liquidity. I think I mentioned earlier, assurances, really, how do fans feel like they're going to be able to, get in, get out in ways that they want to, sort of, in a way, cash in on the value that they've created together with the artist, and realize that opportunity. And so there are certain ways that they can do that with the automated liquidity within Crescendo, as well as those social tokens and ERC20s that are just an inherently more liquid piece as well with the staking.
I guess I never thought about it like that. Like the end goal is to grow your community, and when you do like capped editions like that, then someone does need to leave for someone to enter. And I guess it's like counterintuitive for the most part, because if you think about like what's happening in Web3, I ask this question a lot, like should artists choose virality on Web2 or a niche group of collectors in Web3? And you think about it, like why should they have to, I guess, compromise, right? Why can't you build a big grandiose audience in Web3 while also having your virality, but do it in a way where, that's a good point, I guess, like having someone leave in order for someone to come in. And I never thought about it like that, I guess. I never thought about it like that.
And I think it also then begs the question of, well, what are you optimizing for? Because I think with scarcity and limited editions and saying, oh, well, because there's not that inherent or fundamental value here, the scarcity is what is providing that value. And so having that dictated scarcity is a way to sort of assure or signal to the collector that it's going to potentially go up in value, or that there's some way that it can go up in value, because to buy, someone has to buy it from you. But if what Decent is optimizing for, what we are focused on, our vision is creating these communities, these individual, every artist is independent and they have their group around them, rallying around them, but through the greater Decent and music NFT ecosystem, the network effects of being within Decent's platform, within being within these protocols, such that I can click on someone else's profile or wallet and see what artists they've been collecting and discovering, and in a lot of ways wanting those communities to keep growing and flourishing and not have that necessity for immediate scarcity that is a value driver. We really are looking at, with all of our experiments, what is the real life action that we want to create room for or incentivize, and then build the models that will allow that to happen in these relationships within this Web3 ecosystem.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also want to talk to you about, Will, like how do you think about price psychology for NFTs? Like when should one be priced at $5? When should one be priced at, I don't know, $300, $4,000? 20 cents. I know a lot of it is just throwing shit at the fan right now. But if
Yeah.
you think about scalability and you think about onboarding the next 100,000, a million, like 10 million, right? We try to think about it at the scale of the amount of listeners that kind of like are consuming music today. How can we convert more of those into collectors, and what does that mean? Is that the goal? Like, how do we do that? Because I can tell you right now, and I think everybody knows this, or you and I know this at least, we're not going to get a million collectors in the space buying $300 worth music NFTs, right? So
Yeah.
when you think about designing a platform, when you think about designing experience, how do you think about the psychology around pricing these assets without devaluing them, without letting the artist feel like what their art is worth is not like too little, let alone too much, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I think really where uh, it becomes interesting, or it becomes in the Web3 native mindset, price, curation, everything becomes decentralized, right? The point of starting to look at it as this network, or a protocol where anyone can plug in, right? And that's one thing that we are really looking at, is how at scale. I mean, if you think about decentralization at scale, how does Decent look more like a protocol rather than a platform, right? Where anyone can plug in. You as an artist can plug in with your music, with your fans, and start to build and create and flourish within our ecosystem, within the greater music ecosystem as a whole. So sorry, in that nature of decentralization for both the price and curation, I think it
Right.
becomes a question of, what does the artist want to set that initial price at, or what do they think, looking at the data of who has bought from them in the past, what they've been able to sell in the past, almost also being able to look at what comparable sort of artists or communities have had for pricing. So far for us, we've actually been working with the artists on deciding pricing, for a while it was edition numbers, all that, and so it has been a burden in a way on the artist, on the platform, to decide that. But to find the scalable opportunity, I think it becomes a market question of what really does if you put something out at 0.1 ETH and no one buys it, well, that'll tell you that you need to lower that initial price.
Right.
If you put something out at 0.04 ETH and there's a ton of market demand, well, with this dynamic pricing mechanism, with crescendo and sort of putting that price discovery on the fans, on the collectors, then well, maybe those first few went for a lower price, but you're actually optimizing in a way that true value capture, where, well, for example, with Amanda Francis, that first bonding curve
Right.
model did, she ended up selling within that first day or so. I think it was 34, 35 NFTs, and the price started at 0.05 ETH and went all the way up to I'd have to check at what it is now, but in those 35 purchases, she was then able to bring in something like 3.84 ETH of value there. Wow. Where if she had just put out the standard sort of 20, 25, 30 at 0.1, we aren't necessarily sure that one, there's no telling whether or not it would sell out immediately,
Right.
or sell out in a way where then there is opportunity for secondary market action. But also, even if it did, it would have left a whole 0.8 to 1 ETH
Right.
on the table, where with allowing that market, the fans to decide, there's that added value of being able to not just get the lowest sort of price point, but also up to the highest of what anyone out there is willing to pay for it.
Yeah, I guess that is Yeah, we haven't seen like we've seen bonding curves, right? Like it's a thing. It's happened before. I guess the most the first example that comes to mind is what is that one that OG music project? Euler Beats, I think. Euler, yeah, Euler Beats. Like they introduced the bonding curve, I think, early on to buying these like
And
generative
before that
pieces.
was Ujo, I believe.
Ujo, yeah.
Ujo, Jack, I believe, was it Jack? It was Jack's Blown. Was it Jesse Grushak?
Mm-hmm.
And then Simon I don't want to mess De La Rouvière. I think they were the first ones way back when, maybe 2017, 2018, to do bonding curves.
Got it.
And actually claim to fame, Simon, who I think is sort of touted as the inventor, the creator of this bonding curve model. Amanda Francis, when we did our drop with her, she made this incredible video that was explaining how it all worked, why it was being used, and he actually retweeted and shared it and said, years later, I'm still finding out new and better ways to be explaining my bonding curve model. So that was something, props to her.
That's cool.
She's
awesome, Listen, I think it's incredibly innovative what you guys are doing. I'm excited to see it kind of come to fruition and see this thing scale to more and more and more artists. You guys, out of all the platforms that I'm seeing, everybody's doing incredible things, but I think Decent is the one that's like introducing new thoughts into my mind for the most part, as to how artists could be issuing their mints and what that means to kind of growing a community, let alone leveraging their existing assets to build a community. Most recently that comes to mind is someone like Harrison First, using his social token as a way to kind of introduce new value and new incentives for collectors who decide to stake his NFTs. Like we didn't even get to talk about that, but we have an episode with Harrison coming up shortly.
Oh, awesome.
That we're going to be talking about the drop and everything, because it's something that I've been talking about on Mint for a while. Like, where does DeFi meet the creator economy, let alone music, right? And I think these primitives that you guys are introducing is the foundation for a lot of what's going to come, and is the right level of experimentation for us to kind of like see this stuff play out in real time. So I'm applauding you. I'm applauding the team. I guess before I let you go, final question: like, what can we expect from Decent in the next few months?
Yeah, I think same as you've seen for the last few months, we're going to continue to experiment and really. I think the next step, one thing that we're really excited about is we've now, with Crescendo, with the NFT staking, with the Engage to Earn NFTs, everything that we've done to date, it's been a lot of. I think the one piece of feedback that we've been really critical on ourselves about, but also have heard from some people is, how does it all tie together, right? How are you going to tie it all together? And so we're excited to release a few, blogs, white papers, actually start showing how these different sort of one-off opportunities that we've introduced are all going to tie together into a greater model, into our sort of next step of the Decent product. And with that will come obviously more experimentation. We won't lose that fire, but we are excited to start to release more analysis and learnings and say, this is what worked, this is what has not, and really continue to involve the greater artist and music NFT community, and helping us find that true model that is going to create that best relationship between fans and artists. And so I think in terms of innovation, it'll be even this week and in the next couple of weeks, we have a couple more sort of V2 of Crescendo on its way, but also looking at, in general, starting to take the different experiments and pull them together, tie them together in a way that is going, instead of from 1 + 1 = 2, but 1 + 1 is now going to equal 4 in a lot of ways.
Oof, I like that. Will, where can we find you? Where can we find Decent online? Where can we stay in touch?
So Decent.xyz flows right off the tongue.
Nice.
Decent.xyz. You can find us on Twitter at Decent.xyz. On Twitter, I'm at WD Collier _. I am actively trying to grow my Twitter presence. It's a
Nice. It's
real
hard.
big goal for me.
Yeah.
It is tough. You know, the craziest thing is I never thought in a million years that I would get, you know, just going and trying to, you know, it's like, oh, it's a tweet, it's, you know, a sentence, it's 2 sentences. It's like, well, it really matters. And so I feel like
Yeah.
the most you know, trouble that I have is like, okay, well, what do I write? You know what I mean? Like what I try to tweet more and more, and it's like, well, who cares about Will Collier? Who cares about what I'm thinking? You know what I mean? So,
I saw a recent tweet recently. That's another good one. Strengthenizing and a recent tweet recently. That basically it said that tweet the way you DM people and you'll find, or tweet the way you DM and you'll find your people. And I really like that because it allows you, it reduces the pressure as to what you kind of put online. Even when I'm preparing my tweet storms for introducing the season, I reread it and reread it and reread it and double check it and put it through Grammarly and make sure nothing's wrong. Are the links there? Like everything, right? So whatever, it's part of it. Will, this has been great. We should definitely do this again soon. Thank you for being on. And you got it.
Everyone. We look forward to seeing you on Decent soon. You know, we have our DMs open on the Decent Twitter. My DMs are open. We are always looking for feedback. I think that is the number one thing that comes with experimentation is you have to be open to, and we are excited about, you know, criticism as well as positive feedback, because that is, I think, one of the most important things for this space is we all want to support each other. We all want to rally around each other and really be supportive of every project, of every person that's putting themselves out there and trying new things. But constructive criticism is the only way to grow. So
I love it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you again, Adam. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I'll talk to you soon.
Of course.